What's up, y'all? Super happy to hear that y'all in here. Um, we got some good news and we got some great news. So the good news is you got me. Diallo out of town. Geechee is Geechee. I have no idea. James had to work. So it's just me. And as I thought about it after I got the text, like, yo, it's just me. I had a great friend of mine, my mentor, one of the most important people. Okay, Erica say they listening, so we got to be on our best behavior. Anyhow, so I called my mentor a few weeks ago and was like, yo, we need to rap about some stuff. And he was like, cool. And then I forgot to call him. And then everybody went out of town. So I was like, yo, what you doing tonight? And like my mentor, he came right through for me. And then the homie hit me and she was like, yo, I want to talk about something in particular. I know you got an audience for it. So when can I come on? So I hit her and was like, yo, just come on tonight. So they've never met each other, I don't think. So they're going to meet each other and we're going to talk to each other and we're going to be hanging out. So with all that being said, I want y'all to give some internet claps, finger snaps, and all of those things to one of the most important men in my personal, professional, artistic life. A man who knows how important he is to me, but has no idea how impactful he's been to me. And I'll tell you one thing. Well, I'll tell him. I'll say this when he gets on. I want y'all to give it up for the man, the myth, the legend, brother C. Lee.
I thought my dad was going to come on. I said, is he back? Is him and Yeshua back? Did they come back together? Did they roll the stone away?
Hey, man. I know I've told you this several times, but there have been 3 compliments in my life that have made me just kind of sit back and be like, man, I might be all right. And these are in no particular order. Rhonda Richmond.
That's a good one to start with.
Rhonda Richmond, who's my cousin.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Rhonda Richmond, who's my cousin. Ramona Ward.
That's another one to start with.
And Tabi Moyo.
Yep, that's the third one.
Are opening the Yellow Scarf.
Right.
And they say, oh, you know who would be a good host? Skipp. Tabi calls me on the phone and was like, hey, Rhonda and Ramona want you to come up here to talk to you about something. I was like, all right. I didn't even know the Yellow Scarf was opening. I had no idea what was happening, right? I pull up. I get out the car. I'm in there, and Ian Saunters, Cassandra Wilson.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Smoking a clove.
Yes, sir.
And she looks at me and she says, he's very handsome.
Yes, sir.
So Cassandra Wilson calling me handsome and knowing who I was, you know what I'm saying? That was a big deal. Dr. Harrison at Jackson State telling one of my classmates that I have a beautiful mind.
Mm. What, Afro-Teen?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And your wife telling you that I reminded her of you after a performance.
She sure did. She sure did.
So, yeah. So, y'all don't know who this man is, but you are about to be blown away. Scholar, gentleman, lover of African people, Celie McGinnis. Now, the next piece of this puzzle, it might be an African world order first, and is no conscious effort of our own that this is one of the first women. No, it's not the first because Natalie was on here. So this is the second woman, and her and Natalie are supposed to have a show. This is Charity Clay, a doctor, you know what I'm saying? Like, not medical doctor, like she can't check your blood pressure, but this means that she is a woman of letters.
She can check your intellectual pleasure.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? A real deal scholar, real deal teacher, sociologist, critiquer of the way y'all be acting on the internet with me in text message. This is the homie. She been to the house. She ate my cooking. She hangs out with us. Very good person. I really think she should start making music again. Dr. Charity Clay.
What up?
Black girl fly. You know what I'm saying? Drone pilot.
Yeah.
All that. You know what I'm saying? Photographer.
I like she got no honorary on there. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Got to these days.
Hilarious. There's a lot of honoraries out there. That's hilarious.
Real one. You know what I'm saying?
Gotta let the people know.
Yeah. She like, I did a dissertation. How about you?
Right. I did.
Oh man, I don't know. I don't know if y'all can see the chat as guests.
Click on the comments. You got private chat and comments.
Okay, good. All right, good. So private chat is where we gonna be, but I want y'all to make sure that y'all see Lee Clinton say that she taught me about CRT. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, like real deal professor. So this is a very interesting mix of African people, y'all. And we are three people that really like sinners. So we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
But we're going to lead off with some ball chasing news that shows how athletes are technically enemies of African people at this point. There is a class war. They are on the losing side. They are not siding with you. They are not siding with me. And they are embarrassing us to the point. Hold on. I'm gonna read the text message that Charity sent me. I'm gonna read the text message that she sent me. So on Sunday, Father's Day, she sent me this text. Happy Father's Day, soccer dad. And I said my favorite title. On Tuesday, she sent this text message. Can I come on your podcast and talk about how anti-black it is that NBA players are, quote, scared to come to Memphis, quote? So this text hit me to Celie's friend, Stephen A. Smith.
Oh, really? That's what we're doing. All right. My damn circle of friends just got real interested, but okay. All right.
So I find out that Stephen A. Smith is being critical of Memphis, and I'm very concerned about that. But then yesterday, maybe this morning, I see Kenya Martin, who is typically off base about some things, but in the right area, right?
Right.
This dude says he would feel unsafe in Memphis and he's from South Dallas. If I'm not mistaken, he's from Oak Cliff.
Kenyon Martin, first position in the NBA was forward. His second position was fighting. I mean, come on, have we forgotten? I mean, and on top of that, he has made his whole living. Now, I want to be clear. He was a skilled athlete. So I'm not, but let's be real clear. Along with being a skilled athlete, his claim to fame was he was willing to fight when other people wouldn't. So how all of a sudden, your whole claim to fame, your whole stealer, your whole everything, what you are, sitting up there in Nick Hoops Arena, because anyway, I'm not even talking about Guild Arenas, whom nobody ever said, "Oh, we got Guild, we gonna win the championship." That was never said by any team ever. But let's move on. That your whole, but I'm gonna let you get back to it. But that's the hypocrisy, where your whole thing is about being the tough black dude,
Tough guy, yep.
Right? Except when it doesn't suit you to be that. So go ahead. Yeah, but that's the epitome of hypocrisy. Him making that statement.
Listen, yeah. And before that, it was Jimmy Butler, who on the opposite side of the extremes tries to perform a very I'm different than all the other black people blackness. So I understand why he would say he didn't want to come to Memphis, because that's on brand for him, right? And when you think about Kenyon Martin as a dog on a leash, is really on brand for him too, because he barked when Coach Huggins at Cincinnati say bark. He barked when his NBA folks they say, but now you want to bark at black people in Memphis because somebody telling you to bark.
Yep.
So one thing that I think is important to add to this conversation, right? To deepen our bona fides, Celie McInnes, where are you from in relation to this American experience? Like, where was your childhood spent?
I'm originally from Clarksdale, Mississippi, home of the blues. 40 minutes from Memphis, 40 minutes from Indianola, Mississippi. I grew up seeing the B.B. King homecoming concert every year from the age of 10 to 15. In fact, so I was there when Medgar Evers' brother Charles Evers, taught B.B. King. People forget that B.B. King at one time was the biggest artist in the country. And Charles said, "Look, man, you can't be the biggest artist in the country and not play in your hometown." And so at the age of 10, I had two things happen to me. At the age of 10, I saw both B.B. King and Prince at the age of 10. My father would always say, "You ain't telling the story right," to which I would say to him, "If I told it right, you look even worse. So let me tell it like I tell it, so you won't look as," because it wasn't his intention to take me to see Prince open for Rick James at the age of 10, but that's what happened. So yeah, so I grew, not only that, I grew up not only 40 minutes from Memphis, but by the time I was 15 and 16, my mama thought I was around the corner at JoJo House, and I was on Beale Street when you could still get three things on Beale Street before it became a tourist attraction: good barbecue outside, good music outside, and you could get cut. But the barbecue and the music was well worth the getting the cut. But the real thing was, the only time somebody got cut is when they were stealing. So I don't understand this being afraid to be on Beale Street. If you weren't stealing, you didn't get cut. So I grew up as a 15, 16, 17-year-old hanging out on Beale Street. Nobody ever bothered me. I ran through Memphis. It was a wonderful, wonderful town. And so yeah, so I am a blues baby on the crossroads, live between Clarksdale and Memphis. It was nothing but Memphis was just another place where other cool black people live.
All right. So with that being said, you're not a young man anymore. So Memphis is very different now than it was when you were 15 and 16. Charity, where do you live at this current point in time?
I live in Memphis. I moved here last year from New Orleans. Yep. I live in Memphis. I work in South Memphis doing oral history project. specifically collecting stories from Black folks in South Memphis about how important Memphis as a city is to the story of Black folks in the United States.
Mm.
So hold on. Before we go on, I do have to say, New Orleans was the first place I was welcomed as a writer. I spent many a Sunday nights at Ebony Square on Magazine Street. I spent many nights at Chapatoulas. So I just wanted to say props to Columbia Salam, community bookstore. At the time it was on North Broad. Shout out to Amazu Bolton and the Diaspora Academy in New Orleans. So to Dr. Mona Lisa Salord at Dillard.
Yeah.
That's right. Who and also shout out to my man Saidi Khalid, HBO Deaf Poetry Jam poet, and also we ran around together. So I just want to give props to the sisters from being New Orleans, because New Orleans was, like I said, I spent the many Sunday nights in New Orleans, Friday nights and Sunday nights in New Orleans, being nurtured and being loved by the salted earth people. All right, now return us to our regular scheduled program.
And I live by some standards per capita in one of the most dangerous cities in America.
Yeah. We got to talk about that per capita thing too.
Yeah, right. So this idea that a place being very Black is inherently very dangerous is very telling.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's very interesting that they filmed that show in Los Angeles.
Right.
Here's the thing, because yes, because Memphis is so Black, you can't be here without being around Black people.
Yep.
You can live in LA and never go near Black people. You can live in Chicago, New York, these other cities that have, pockets of crime or hotspot areas. But because those cities aren't majority Black, you can live in those cities as an athlete specifically and never actually be around Black people until you want to do some real hood shit. But because Memphis is Black through and through, there's nowhere you can be in the city and not be around Black people. So if the danger is really Blackness, then Memphis is gonna be dangerous to you because you can't escape Black people here. And then what made me laugh was just last year the DOJ, they published their report about how disproportionately dangerous Memphis is to Black people because of police violence. Right? There's reports being talked about how dangerous it is for Black people in Memphis because of environmental things or displacement or all these systematic attacks. But the athletes, they weren't saying that they were scared to come to Memphis because of the things that Black people in Memphis face. They was making it seem like they scared to come to Memphis because it's niggas in Memphis as Black athletes. But we had this conversation. Basketball is not a trench baby sport anymore. Basketball is a country club sport. So you don't have a lot of the players, I was just talking to someone who I did an oral history with, talking about how Memphis as a basketball city is beloved by folks who have that blue collar work ethic. That's why Tony Allen and Zebo and Mark Gasol and John Morant, Derrick Rose are beloved here, right? Because they came here and they didn't expect Memphis to be Miami.
Right.
So they came here and they invested in the community. Basketball camps, Mother's Day brunches, speaking at schools, that's all low-hanging fruit to invest in the community that you're living in a community where people pour into the sports.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if you're scared of Black people, or as you started off saying, if you're the enemy of Black people because your money has you in such a category you don't feel accountable to the community anymore, it might be dangerous for you because you're walking around people throwing your money in their face and not being willing to engage them. So in that way, it might be dangerous. It might be dangerous for you, max contract basketball player, to walk around Memphis and not want to encourage or invest in any of the things in the community. Now, I'm not saying a basketball player can come in and save Memphis, but you can invest in the people that are spending their time and energy to make your job reality, right? Because it was black folks that brought the Grizzlies to Memphis.
So then this man says,
well, hold on for a second.
Okay.
Because we need to put context to what Doc Clay just said. So from 6th grade to 12th grade, I was a mediocre multi-sport athlete. Emphasis on the mediocre. Just good enough that I actually did earn a D1 baseball scholarship to Valley. Turned it down because Jackson State was my family school. I had been attending Jackson State events since 1975. Both my parents graduated from Jackson State. My father attended the first HBCU game in the vet where Jackson State now plays in 1970. What I can tell you, because when you talk about country club attitude, that is directly a result of AAU and travel ball being the devil. Now, what a lot of people don't know what AAU and travel ball is, we to give you just a quick, very general understanding for folks in the chat who may not know. So AAU and travel ball was essentially, I'm not going to say started by, but they are now controlled and feeder programs by the big shoe companies and by a couple of the top investors. And so AAU and travel ball basically does two things. The first thing it does is it turns a young person into a one-dimensional monolith by telling this child by the age of 6th grade, you can only be one thing. You can only play one sport, right? So the whole thing of being, like I said, a mediocre multi-sport athlete, it's almost out the window. So that's the first thing it does. But then secondly, not only does it isolate you to one sport, it then isolates you from your family. Because to be engaged in travel ball, either your family has to be able to afford travel ball, or one of those shoe companies or sponsors have to be willing to sponsor you because they see a check coming from you on the other end. So what happens is from 6th grade until the time you become a senior. Now, let's not forget about how these sponsors are also paying the tuition for some of our inner city young people to go to these private schools. They're paying their tuition. So when you wonder why most prep and academy and private schools got majority black athletes, it's because some sponsor or the school themselves are offering scholarships to them as a way to get a return on their investment. So the attitude that we see being displayed about Memphis is really just another extension of what happens when you take a 6-year-old and isolate them. It is no different than when record companies in the 1970s decided we're going to take all the black bands and all the black groups and we're going to take the one popular face out that group. So we're going to take Michael out the Jacksons. We're going to take Lionel Richie out of the Commodores, right? What we want is the singular gift that we can control and isolate, make our own, so that the community loses that resource. That is what AAU and travel ball is, and that is why you see these particular elitist attitudes toward the community, because they have never, since the 6th grade, truly had to engage in the community. I'll shut up so we can get back. But I wanted to just, when you talked about that attitude, I wanted us to be able to put a root to what that attitude is. That is a corporate device, right? Let's be clear what that is. That's a corporate device to identify, how should I say, a type of labor and to commodify that labor, while at the same time, as Dr. Clay was saying, make it to where they're not putting, the corporate entities are not saying you can't invest in your community, but these young men and women are becoming so brainwashed, right, that they don't even think about reinvesting in those communities because they're not really part of them, because they haven't been a part of them since they were 10, 11 years old. I'll shut up.
So the other piece of this is the way that these same folks use blackness for their individual gain, but then come into our communities and blame us for the conditions. And I'm not talking about Deion Sanders, but I am talking about Coach Prime.
And we'll come to the prime, but that is the basic point of Kenyon Martin, right? He's a thug until it's inconvenient to be a thug, right? He's a bad boy until it's inconvenient to be a bad boy. He pitches himself as the blackest there is, right? And now you the blackest there is until it's time to go mingle with some more black folk. To go mingle with black folk who may, as Doc Clay said, may have cause to call you on the carpet and say, what are you doing with this so-called black? Where's your tough blackness when it comes to dealing with the real issues in our community that's killing us? Go ahead. I'll shut up.
And one thing I was thinking in this context is, for me, as soon as Stephen A. Smith brought the conversation to the forefront, we should have deaded it, but we don't have a code, because the truth is, if there's a sentiment amongst black players that they feel unsafe in Memphis, that's a conversation to have behind closed doors to figure out how to fix it or how to address it. That's not something that you say in mixed company. But again, when people are isolated from their communities, right, when they don't see themselves as part of a community, when they are being fed what to say, right, by oppressors and enemies, that's what you get. Because we can say that, because if Memphis is danger, two things. If we say that Memphis is danger, if basketball players who have the ability to be the most protected physically and insulated physically are talking about how dangerous Memphis is, if that's the logic, then imagine how dangerous Memphis is for kids,
right?
For mothers, for fathers, for working people. I think my issue, and this is why, Stephen A. Smith has made his money being the black voice of anti-blackness. So he's on assignment. So my question is like, well, what's the assignment? Because we're talking about a city that's under attack, right? And if you dehumanize and criminalize a group of people, it makes it real easy for the masses to accept and even support the way that a system enacts violence upon them, right? I'm gonna say that again, right? If you criminalize and dehumanize a group of people, it makes it easier for the masses to accept and even support the violence the system enacts upon them, right? Yep. So in the moment where Memphis is no more dangerous than, listen, I moved from New Orleans to Memphis, and before I was in New Orleans, I was in Oakland. Before that, I was in Texas for a while, and then before that, I was in Chicago. And then I grew up in Minneapolis, when at the time, per capita, it had the highest murder and teen pregnancy rates in the nation. Right. So technically, I'm supposed to be always in a place where I'm supposed to have felt danger. Right. But it's not a coincidence that now, as we're talking about, the significance of Memphis and it being attacked, whether it's environmental by the XAI, whether it's the expansion of St. Jude, whether it's the ideas of gentrification being the way to save the community. The idea is that, we might need to rid the city of black people, right? That they're the dangerous and violent ones, not that they're the ones that are in danger of the violence. That's the assignment that I feel is being served with this propaganda. And that's the thing that I wanted to push back on, because again, I live here and, I'm getting calls and texts about, oh, is it really that bad? Is it really that dangerous? I mean, if you scared of black people, you scared of yourself. And I don't see black people as inherently dangerous.
So years ago, quick story. Years ago, I grew up in a Baptist church. And then I started going to an Episcopal church when I was a man. So I'm going to this Episcopal church, and this guy is talking about what he was hearing in America. Well, what he was hearing in Africa about coming to America. Mm-hmm. And he was terrified of black people in America. Mm-hmm. This man was from the Sudan. saying how terrified he was of black people in America. So what ultimately ends up happening is we are in an environment that is so racist that if you do not have any intention, Malcolm told us, you will be hating the oppressed and cheering the oppressor.
Right.
Because we are in these environments, and this is no disrespect to Kenyon Martin, he's just wrong. Mm-hmm. Without being in a place and being in a community that can always challenge your thinking and your position on the thing, without being around people that know, that study, you end up having this very folk wisdom that is nothing other than what white people think.
Yep.
And I tell black people all the time, if a white person has said that, you would be offended.
Right. Right.
So what are we doing, especially someone that has the means that a Kenyon Martin does? Like, we're not talking about a player who played, 2 years in the league, made him $3 million, and now he got to live the rest of his life on that. Right? Like, you're talking about a player that made millions of dollars. Like,
yep.
He's a real millionaire.
Yep.
Yeah.
Does for his family, provides, and isn't looking at the contradiction. I'm going to overshare. There's a situation going on in my house right now that I got to deal with Miles Garvey. Because the boy is starting to think that he's special.
Hmm. Sound like a teenager or preteen.
Right. Right. Like he think he's special. And he did something that he doesn't quite know that I know. He doesn't know yet that I know that he did. And now we're having to have this conversation about you not being that African from the Sudan. Hmm. Don't you dare look around you and think that you here because of something that you did. Right. In the same way that I'm not here respective to something that I did. Right. Like, we have been put in these positions to do the things that we are required to do as African people.
Right.
And these athletes get all of this stuff at a young age. They have no political education whatsoever.
Right.
So they just, like Charity said earlier, they have begun to parrot these anti-black talking points that are described as tough love and hard nose when you just sound like every other racist.
Right.
And in understanding that.
But and I'll just
go ahead.
Chime in. Something my father used to say. He said, no adult, because I want to come to the tough love. Then I want you to get back to rolling. But the tough love thing, here's what people need to understand. My father said that the only adult who has their right to put their hands on a child is an adult who was hugged and kissed and loved that child into thinking that it is a worthy being. Mm. If you have never hugged and kissed and loved that child into a worthy being, and you put your hands on that child, you just fighting. So that's the problem with the tough love, that it ain't no love with the tough. See, the tough may be the bitter part of the medicine, but the tough ain't the medicine. The love is the medicine. So yes, you are 100% correct. But I just always want to throw that out there, that when people talk about tough love, it's usually people who've never shown no love to black people who also want to be tough with them. I said, go ahead, go on, finish your off.
So that part, right? Like, you, second person plural, are, well, Kenyon Martin in this instance, Stephen A. Smith, you are being critical of a thing that you come from when you are doing nothing to impact the situation that you come from.
Right.
And you think that you yourself got you out of that situation through some greatness of athletic ability. Mm-hmm. Now, if the only people that deserve to come out of that situation are like 6'10", can jump out the gym people, what you're saying is your mama and your daddy didn't deserve to come out of that situation.
Right. Right.
And that's what I don't understand.
Well, again, that and I hate to harp back onto it. It goes back to the AAU. So when I was in high school, grew up in Clarksville, Mississippi, went to the county school, and I was in the college prep program. And what was interesting is the further you go up, the fewer black people stay in the college prep program. So by the time I got to be a senior, this is gonna be funny. 4, 5, 6, 7. There was 7 people left in the college prep program. Wait, 7, yeah. 4 were white, 3 were black. All 4 of the white kids were in all of the college prep classes: the physics, the senior math, which was Cal and Trig, the advanced civics, blah blah blah. I was of the 3 blacks. I was the only black student. The other 2 rotated. It was almost like double dutch and tag. It was like they had decided we ain't gonna take all these damn college courses, right? So when we were getting ready, and also I need to tell this about my high school. I watched my high school from my 9th grade to my 12th grade year. I watched my high school go from being, and it doesn't sound like a big swing, but it was. I watched my high school go from being 65% white when I was 9th grade to 65% black when I was 12th grade. So I watched that swing. All right. So you got to understand what kind of teachers were there and still rooted in what. So my senior year, as we all have to go see the counselor, white counselor. Side note, my principal hated me because as a 9th grader, I used to call him Principal Consonant, as in violent consonant. Because he was a white man that was so proud of his name. He was so proud of his name. And word got back to him that I called him Principal Consonant. And he said, McIntyre, why you call him that? Principal Consonant. I said, because, sir, you are one consonant away from being the most terrible human being in the world. Because your name is Robert S. Lee. Just think if you would have been a vile officer and all that white man could do was get mad. I hadn't cussed him. I hadn't done anything to him. I said, so, sir, you should be ready. So anyway, so saying all that to say, my counselor told me, back in this college and this, that, and the other. And I found out, because, you talk when you go to the counselor's office. And I found out I was the only black kid that counselor said, you should go to college. And my pop come to see me, and Skipp knows my father. My mother and father were divorced, but my father was kind of man. He would drive 3 hours to Clarksdale to see me on Wednesday when he knew he was going to see me Friday. Right? That's what he would do. So I said, Pop, Mr. Shah, some crazy white name. He said, I'll go on to somebody he told go to college. Ain't that something? He said, oh, dumbass boy, that's because your mama work in the district. He wouldn't dare tell your ass not to go to college. And then he just bust my butt. I thought I was special. Like you talking to that man when you talk about special. I thought I was. He said, no, boy, you ain't special. He don't think your ass should go to college. But he not gonna tell you that. Because your mama work in the district. That's the kind of reality check that our young athletes are not getting. Often because the parents themselves are living vicariously through the children. And if they're not living vicariously through the children, they see their children as a meal ticket. Now, I'm not saying this, I want to be clear. I'm not saying this of each and every parent of a major athlete. I'm saying that there are enough of these parents, however, that don't check their children. So to y'all's point, they get this very delusional notion about how special they are because they never have anybody tell them these folks only want you because they see you as labor that they can exploit. And until somebody tells them that, right, that's the conversation. But of course, it's not in the corporations for which they work. It's not even in for the corporation for whom now they are doing podcasts. It is not in any of the corporations' benefit to tell these people that you are not special. Therefore, this delusional notion about their relationship to Black people and how they, quote, escape these areas, right, have these narratives that are far from the truth. I'll shut up. Y'all go ahead.
Yeah. And now we have now what we're seeing is the offspring of that generation.
Yep.
So now you have, we joke about this all the time about how increasingly the league is becoming children of players.
Yep.
Right? Or people who hooked up with children of players at a young age. So they're even further removed because they're getting the message that being special is what got your dad in a position to make you not even have to be special because you're going to get picked just because I can make sure you get picked. So they're even further detached because they're not living in communities, right? Mm-hmm. We talk about, the shame of integration, taking away the class diversity in Black communities. So they're not living around other Black kids, right? They're consuming Blackness through social media, right? Yeah. So while they're living in these very isolated spaces where they're one of the only few Blacks, they're consuming this type of Blackness that's just teaching them how to be this thug, that's teaching them how to be tough. You see 16, 17-year-olds, with tattoos and goals, and they have this persona, but they have no connection to Blackness. Like you said, they're getting no political education. So now the idea is it went from one generation saying, I'm special, and as an individual, I was able to pull myself up the way others couldn't. So that's why I'm looking down. And now you got a generation saying, you know what? Honestly, I don't need to be special because my daddy got enough money that I'm going to get by regardless. So you got now a generation of NBA players who want to go someplace where they can do something other than play basketball. Mm-hmm. No, you don't want to come to Memphis because if you come to Memphis, basketball is going to be the main thing. If you go to LA, you can get into all kind of other stuff besides basketball. If you go to New York, you can get into all kind of other stuff besides basketball. Even though right now in the NBA, it's the small market teams that are actually successful.
Right.
That's not the draw, right? Toronto, right? Toronto is an international, big city. But right now you got Oklahoma City and Indiana in the finals. Those are two places nobody really wants to live in. But they're not labeled as dangerous. Right. And then a couple years ago, you got Milwaukee, which is also on one of the most high, crime. But that doesn't come up. But they won a championship. So now you got a generation that's trying to pick where they want to be, not based on the career they're in. Right. I don't want to go to a place where I can win. I want to go to a place where I can, no disrespect to Desmond Baines. But again, this is Black folks not being on code because he had a good time in Memphis. Memphis gave to him. He gave to Memphis. He got traded. That's business. When they asked him about Memphis, he could have just said, I had a great time there. Now I'm somewhere else. But he was like, in Memphis, we didn't have no windows in the practice facility, and it was like the dungeon. And now I'm in Orlando, and I can see fresh air and blah. Bro, you could have just kept your mouth shut. You didn't have to say any of that because Orlando is not Memphis. Right? So even trying to make the two comparisons is you can't compare them.
And I just want to add this little part about Orlando not being Memphis. If you leave Disney World,
I was just about to say, yeah, they giving him the tour, right? They take it, he don't even got a house there or nothing. He just got traded like yesterday. He ain't seen nothing but the practice facility. So that's why I say being on code, man, just shut your mouth. You don't have to say nothing, but you definitely quick story. I was watching a panel. We had a panel for some students that I'm working with this summer. And it was some white liberals that are, fighting against Elon Musk and XAI. And it was a Black woman who runs an organization. I'm gonna say this the nicest way I can, that thinks that teaching poor Black kids in Memphis how to code is going to bring the neighborhoods out of poverty, right? So I'm sitting in there trying not to make that face you making, Skipp. And but I know that me, the Black woman on the panel, and about 3 other people is the only Black people in the room. So I made the decision. I'm not going to call her out on her bullshit in mixed company.
Right.
Because that's code. I'm not
Right.
going, because she was speaking with confidence and it was sounding good. And we teach the kids these programs and then they can get these jobs. And in my mind, I'm like, that's not how that shit works. That's not how that works. But in the mixed company, right? I'm not gonna raise my hand and say, actually, you're totally wrong, black woman, right? Because I know just being an African person, being on code, I'm not gonna front you in front of mixed company. So it could have just been like you didn't have to say nothing. So again, these athletes, they're disconnected in the fact that they're either oblivious to the potential harm they're doing by saying the dumb shit, right? Or the way the puppet masters are pulling the strings is somehow incentivizing them to say this stuff. Because the truth is, they're not really knowledgeable enough to be in the conversation either way.
I just want to thank you. You just taught me a lesson because my problem is I'm 55 years old now, and when I hear people say stupid shit, I just say that's stupid. My wife does not like the fact that I used to get us kicked out of church because I used to be the dude on Sunday when you would quote a scripture, and then what you were talking about that had nothing to do with that scripture, I was just like, and it's not Sunday school, like this regular day up there, I'm like, and then that's when the ushers show up with them gloves. And they walk us out. And so, yes, I've been walked out of 4 churches, just so you know. So I want to thank you for teaching me about, sometimes it's best to be silent in love, right? And I need to learn how to be silent in love. That's right, Purple Family. I thank you. I always love it when the Purple Family, the Minneapolis Genius. For those of y'all don't know, I'm a Prince scholar. So anytime we get some purple love in the house, I appreciate that purple love. Thank you for pinning that, Brother Skipp. Always kind of. I tell people I bleed blue and I bleed purple. I bleed blue for the Blues, and I bleed blue for Jackson State, and I bleed purple for the Minneapolis Genius. All right, we go back to our regular schedule program
now. So Charity, and we gonna move on from this in a second and talk about the brilliance that was in centers that we didn't get to talk about over here. Yeah. But what do you think about this statement right here?
I'll say this. So I lean toward what Dr. Clay said. I'll just say this, that time, I'm a person now that as I gotten older, I think time and place is important. And I think one of the things, if you want to talk about, if you want to say, what are one of those things, and I think that's also what we're talking about here, time and place, right? Mm-hmm. There was a time and place for those people to make those comments. And clearly the time and place was not on television. So I would say that I lean toward what Dr. Clay said, if there's a possibility, one, that I know I'm gonna meet with this sister and be able to get this sister's ear. Now, if there may not be a place, I may try to exercise the love and say, sister, I agree with you to a point. Let me just give you so you can always disagree with somebody in love. So I think that's the other position that you don't what's the word? We can disagree without being disagreeable. Because I think what Dr. Clay, and I not to speak for her, and I want you, Skipp and Dr. Clay. I think her ultimate point was we have to be able to communicate in love so that even when I disagree with you, you don't feel like I have attacked your person. And I think that a lot of times when we disagree with people, if people leave feeling like we attack their person and not the position, then they're not going to hear us anyway. I'll shut up and let you two chime in on that.
Couple things. One, to your point, when you call somebody out in public, especially when I've learned this. When you call somebody out in public, especially when they've been invited to speak as someone who knows what they're talking about, they're going to get defensive. Right. And that can derail the purpose, because my purpose in this, honestly, my purpose is not to call her out as much as it is to have conversations with students later to complicate or add some context to what she's saying. Right. Because the reality is I can have conversations with my students later to say, what did you think about what she said? Did that make sense to you in the context of the other things we're learning? Right. So in that point, calling her out wasn't going to serve the greater purpose that I serve as an educator and as an African. Another thing within the context of the basketball thing, and just as a context of being an African person, like I think we do too much showing out in white folks' company. This is just my Kwame Ture closed ranks argument, right? The idea that, this is my critique generally of social media, right? Everything you say you're going to do, you're putting right in front of your enemy on the battlefield. any weakness or chink in your armor or thing. I think in terms of, mixed company, closing ranks. The reality is I believe that certain conversations are sacred and they should be had amongst family. Right? It might seem outdated, but I think right now we're under attack in ways that we haven't been before because we're so detached. Because we become so comfortable saying anything in the company of white folks, we don't understand the danger we're in by sometimes speaking so freely. Right? I think the actual idea of a Black person speaking freely is a misnomer. Right? The idea that the things that we say don't have consequence and don't need context. So I don't know if it would be outdated. I understand how it may sound outdated. And I know that we are in a call out culture era, right? Where the idea is that if you call out something in the moment, it makes what you're saying more legitimate than if you had waited for it to be maybe better received. But I don't argue with folks on the internet,
Right.
So what I'll say to that is as a younger person, I definitely thought, well, you talking, I'm gonna talk, right?
Right.
And then I started recognizing that a whole lot of this stuff becomes not about what either person is talking about, but about those two people talking at each other.
Yep.
And it's just another way to churn up mess.
Yep.
And people lose whatever the conversation is about because they just want to be a part of the mess.
Yeah.
Right.
And see now we finna do this with you, right? Because this some funny looking money in the light, right? Like the fact that you are still kind of pushing this thing that ain't nothing that we talking about, right? So I think we can all agree here that when H. Rap Brown, Jamil Alameen says that to be Black is necessary, but it's not sufficient.
Come on.
Right? There are conversations that I will have with Diallo on the phone that I would never have with him on here.
Right.
And we consider some of y'all family.
Right.
But we also don't know who all watching.
Exactly.
And what they clip and how they turn that into a thing and the amount of energy and effort that it takes for us to reconcile all these other people picking sides in an argument that ain't even about whatever they think we're talking about.
Right.
So, I wonder if you. All right, we just disagree, bro.
Here's the thing. My initial comment, I used the story to shine light on the initial comment was saying that for athletes that don't have the context to talk about the conversation, jumping into it in public, right? It is how we get where we are now. And I say this because I literally just talked to somebody yesterday who was talking about how much Desmond Bain expressed his love for Memphis, how much he didn't want to leave, how much the city has poured into him, and how much he's done in the community the time he's been here. But when they put the camera and the microphone in his face, the comment that they took from what he said was that their practice facility was like a dungeon. Right. And now it's different because he's in Orlando and he can get fresh air. That might not have been all he said, but had he not made that statement in public, right? Again, when I say being without code, without having context of this is the time you're in, this is the assignment and the way this narrative is going, be mindful of what you say in mixed company, he might have just been oblivious. And again, like you said, Skipp, they could have just taken some of the things he said. He could have lauded praises for Memphis for 10 minutes, but they took that clip. And that's why I say that we need to be mindful of what we say in places where we can't control what's being said. I'm very mindful, right?
Especially if it's somebody that we want to have community with continuously. So that's why I could be like, Coach Prime is a scam artist and a sucker, because I don't never want him to come back into Jackson again. Matter of fact, fly around Mississippi. Don't even fly over us to get to where you going. Just
So I want to say two things. I definitely want to address the co-Sanders, but I want to. So I get, is it Justice? I want to make sure I get Justice point. I will say this to brother Justice, and again is that I think one of the things that we forget when we study our history, that many of things that the people who we love, who we admire, who said things publicly, those things said publicly was only said publicly after private strategizing. Everything Malcolm X said publicly was said after private strategizing. Everything that King said publicly was said publicly after private strategizing. So that not only did they have private strategizing, they knew exactly what was going to be said publicly. Like, let it be clear, right? We focus on, Brother Malcolm's chicken coming home to roost. That was said for a particular point. He was making a particular point. But that's the only thing he ever said that wasn't said privately and strategized before it was said publicly. So it's not a question of, do we not talk publicly? The real question is, or the real problem is, we are not strategizing privately before we talk publicly. Because if we strategize privately, then the things we say publicly would have an even greater impact, because we would have an organizing mechanism to go with whatever we say publicly. So that's what I'll say about that, about the private and the public. I'm going to be, and probably Skipp knows. Well, Skipp is probably the only someone who knows this. I was in the thick of and writing articles every day, right? I've been connected to Jackson State since 1975. Here's what I'll say about that, and so that people can truly understand what Brother Skipp is saying, what he's feeling. Prior to leaving Jackson State, and I promise I'm going to connect this back to where we are, but I want, because people need to understand the nuances. Prior to leaving Jackson State, Deion Sanders had always been attacked by white media and loved by black folks. When he left Jackson State to go to Colorado, was the first time in his life that a sizable number of black people questioned his motives. But here's the thing. They were only questioned because he said, God brought me to Jackson State. He said God wanted me to level the playing field. Now, here's a little backstory to that. Everybody close to the program knew he was only going to be there 2 years. I need everybody to understand this. So it wasn't, see, when he left, the only people who weren't surprised were Jacksonians. And in fact, Sister Clay, when the rest of Black America was losing their mind, we was quietly like, hey, we got a coach. Our coach was actually on Coach T.C. Taylor was on staff before Coach Sanders got there.
And I just want to add this. We had been saying we wanted TC to be the coach for years before Deion got there.
Yeah. So here's what happens. For the first time in his life, he gets questioned by a sizable amount of black people that it bothers him. And unfortunately, he essentially said or allowed Jackson State to be thrown under the bus of we were stealing from him to justify that's why he went to Colorado. Now, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. The school came out and said, here's the real thing. Here's the situation. So, but to Brother Skipp's point, I understand why there are a lot of Jacksonians, because he didn't tell the lie, but you know how like y'all talking about somebody take a clip? He allowed somebody to take a clip of what he said, and he never came back and said, you're misconstruing that clip. Because the misconstruing of that clip allowed him to get black people off his back. So there are going to be a lot of black folk, right, And I will only say this. The only reason it didn't bother me as much is because I never watched PWI sports before. I'm a big Jackson State fan. I'm a big HBCU guy. So I didn't follow it as much. Also, I've never sent a text and a tweet in my life. Like, I'm not on social media. So the where it was really stinky and nasty, I wasn't in that watching my school get dragged every day. But people, I just want to put that in context to where, because then taking clips, here's how bad it is. Yesterday on the Jackson State page, somebody commented on the Jackson State page, y'all still miss Coach Prime. And we are HBCU national champions. We are HBCU national champions. And they're still, but I needed to say that because somebody may try to clip, and they'll probably still clip Brother Skipp. But at least all you can do is put the truth out there and let that. But I think that speaks to a larger point of how difficult it is to have nuanced conversation in public. And I think that's the point that a lot of people miss, because to what Sister Clay said, the reason nuanced conversation is difficult in public. Because again, there are things that Skipp could say to me, that Sister Clay could say to me, that any of y'all in this chat could say to me in private. I may be upset, but I'll take it and I'll evaluate it. You say that same issue to me in public in front of people? Yeah. I'm 55 and I know how I'm going to react. I can only imagine how I react at 25. So I think that's what we're all saying about the difference between public and private conversation, is that different mediums demand different protocol. And I would only say this. I would hope that we all get mature enough to understand the medium or the venue in which we find ourselves and use the proper protocol to be as effective as possible. I'll shut up.
Hey, so we got that. You know what I'm saying? Now we finna get into something else that we were supposed to get into a little while ago. But you know, time caught up with us. So I had no interest in seeing Sinners until Charity asked me multiple times had I seen it. I think she asked me like 2 or 3 times had I seen it. So I was like, well, okay, I guess I'll go see it. And then we talked about it in passing on this show. So it's like, all right, well, I guess we're going to see it. And then we went to see it. And then I came on here to have a conversation about it. Conversation did not go the way that I wanted the conversation to go, to just kind of talk about it. So now I want to talk a little bit, you know, hopefully y'all got a little bit of time left, you know, maybe, 20, 30 minutes if y'all can squeeze that in.
Yeah.
Okay. Seeley wrote a piece called Facing the Hellhounds on Our Trail, the metatextual duality of the blues and Ryan Coogler centers. It is about 5 million words. It is longer than Ready for Revolution. It is a piece of pieces. And I want to pull some pieces out of it to just kind of talk about for a minute. Because I think this conversation of these Black athletes, we invite them into our space. They do a thing. We invite them into our space and allow them to speak on behalf of us. And then they keep talking and embarrass us mightily. Like they take a political stance and we elevate them. And that political stance could be as simple as taking a knee. Right. It could be pretending to read Malcolm X. Like it could be any number of things. And we're like, yeah, LeBron about to get him. And then LeBron don't get him. And we left out here embarrassed. And I think some of the things that I'm going to pull from the piece that C. Lee wrote allows us to kind of maintain the same conversation of being critical of the positions that we ourselves take and how these positions are really racist white positions that we are taking, not only because of anti-blackness, but in the hopes that we will gain some white acceptance from it. So ultimately, we keep holding ourselves to a position. We keep holding ourselves to a position that if we would stop being black, white people would stop acting white. And I think it's something that Diallo has said a million times on this show. That white people don't act like they act with us because we black. They act like that because they white.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think in the second paragraph, Brother McInnes closes with this question. If African Americans were the moral compass of America, have enough of them embrace the treasures offered by the fallacy of white supremacy that humanity is now too far gone from being saved?
I think, man, first of all, thank you for writing the piece. Because everybody should read it. If you like words, if you like literacy, read it aloud, read it to your kids, thank
you, Sam. First of all, I want to say just thank you for that, sis. I appreciate that.
No, because not only is it beautifully written, but the way it engages the reader, because the lead up to asking that question points out a lot of things in the movie that allow you to see how folks are wrestling with the way that whiteness presents its ideal of blackness, its ideal of freedom, and the way we wrestle with adopting white folks' ideas of these things and then enacting them, and then the chaos that it causes in our own communities, because whiteness has become our frame for understanding who we are and what freedom is. And I think that speaks a lot to when we talk about black celebrity and black elite folks, right? They're buying into this idea that freedom is, I always say, that Kanye West move into the neighborhood where I'm the only black guy. Like that's aspirational, right? So I think that it connects sinners to this conversation about why we're using whiteness as the measure of us as black people and of our freedom. Because I say this because a lot of the critiques that I've heard about sinners are made from a perspective of white-centered blackness, right? There's so many things about blackness or Africanness that folks are missing because they're seeing themselves as black people through the way that, the way the falsified African consciousness that Dr. Amos Wilson tells us about, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a lot of what we hear when we hear critiques of, I'm still talking to people who keep reading Mary as a white woman and making critiques of the movie about her as a white, and in what world do you not understand, that, because you can only see it through the lens of that being an interracial relationship, right? So those are the kind of things. But yeah, to quickly answer the question, we all doomed if we keep looking at whiteness's definition of freedom as the way to liberate ourselves as African people.
Did you want to add anything to that, C. Lee?
No, I that was not a rhetorical question when I wrote it. I remember writing it. I think, I was thinking people are gonna think I'm actually being rhetorical, but it is a question where, so being from Clarksville, Mississippi, I was raised around people who were too poor to have grass, right? And these people got up every morning and swept their dirt because of the honor and dignity they had in themselves. They weren't sweeping their dirt to go be white. They weren't sweeping that. There was this African thing that they had in themselves. And then when you would walk by their house, the dirt looked like marble. All right? They did that every morning. There would be no cigarette butts in the dirt. There'll be no rocks in the dirt. They were getting up and they were ordering their lives in the way African people had always ordered their life. I flash forward to growing up to that, and my wife and I, we lived in West Jackson for a long time. I rented a house just for a minute, and then I owned. And I remember I was mowing my yard, and this little kid came up to me, and it was just a little kid in the neighborhood. I would talk to him from time to time, and he walked up to me and he said, "My mom and them say you think you white." And it was at the end of mowing the yard, and I was like, "I'll bite. I'm through mowing the yard. This will be good." And I go, "Why do your mom and them think that I think I'm white?" And he said, because she said, "You be mowing that yard and it ain't even yours." And I went, "Oh, okay. So the fact that I want to be a certain way, ordered and neat, despite who may have ownership around me or even on me, doesn't to them speak to my own Africanness, doesn't speak to the fact that African people bring beauty wherever we are, right? Because they've been so perverted that the only thing they can figure is he trying to be white." So that's what, and so that loss of a sense of sweeping your dirt, not because you're trying to impress somebody, because beauty is an innate part of who you are, and that bringing beauty is an innate part of who you are. Have we lost that, right? Have we lost that part of who we are? And again, that's not a rhetorical question. Like, at this point, I don't even have an answer for it, but I think we need to ask the question, because I think that if we ask the question, we can start getting at the modus operandi for what we do, right? For me, it's not about chasing the bag, it's why we chasing the bag. For me, it's not about black people harming black people, it's why we harm black people. For me, right? So that's the real question, is what is it that has changed? And I end on this. I've been, for the past 24 years, I've been teaching in a science program. I teach a literature of science program in a science program 25 years. It is designed specifically for the best of the best black children in the Jackson metro area. Like, you got to be in the top 10% of your class even to apply for this, right? Because we said, look, there are a lot of enrichment classes for black children. We're the best of the best classes, right? So one of my classmates, and I want to stress to you, this was a Jackson State classmate, sat in the class at Jackson State with me. She is a lawyer. Her husband, who also graduated from Jackson State, is an engineer. They had a son who's in the program, which when I said, it's time for me to teaching my damn friends' children. It is time for me to do something else. So, and I said to her just in past, he was ninth grade, I said, "Oh, he's doing great in the program. He going to be ready for the yard." Yard is what we call Jackson State. She looked me in my eyes and said, "Oh no, we're not considering a black school for him." Now, if he wouldn't have been standing right there, we talk about what to say in public and not to say. I couldn't say in front of her child that I was teaching, "Your dumb ass went to Jackson State. Everything you and your silly ass husband got came from Jackson State." But I can't say that because I got to go to class tomorrow and teach him literature of science. And he's going to be looking like he called my mama dumbass yesterday. Now I can't teach him because he mad I called his mama dumbass. That's time and place, people. If you want to know time. But that gets to the point of, look what we have lost. That this sister who is a lawyer, her husband who is an engineer, only able to do that because Jackson State put them in the position to do that, now think so less of the thing that put them in the position to do that, that they won't even pour back into the institution and allow that's the question I'm asking. Have enough of us lost whatever it was that America is doing? Because we were the only thing holding this hellhole up anyway. That's it. I'll shut up.
So the other piece that I put in the chat was one of my favorite sentences, and something that someone on the internet said in a different way. But somebody said Chicago is Mississippi people with coats, and I like this. This statement right here that you wrote, brother. one of the most important aspects of Sinners is that the film opens with smoking stack, foreshadowing and affirming a lesson that was revealed by noted novelist, poet, and essayist Richard Wright that the North in general and Chicago in particular ain't nothing but Mississippi with tall buildings. So really setting the stage that like we have gone out, we have captured a particular thing that you told us was not available to us here. Recognize that there was nothing really out there for us. So we came back to where we were to build a thing, right? And I think that really sets the foundation for what is happening to arrive at the vampire attack, right? Like I think the other piece, and I'm intentionally kind of skipping around to.
Let me. Can I add one?
Oh,
piece
go ahead. Yeah, please.
And I didn't. It's one of the things. It's both of you know when you're doing projects, like you can't squeeze everything you want. I wanted to put this other piece in there, but it was going to take away from the linear movement of the piece. To give some context to that, a lot of people don't know that Richard Wright's second major work, right? I'm talking chronologically, Black Boy, was actually not published complete when it was first published in 1945.
Mm-hmm.
So that the section in Chicago was omitted because the white liberal publishers did not appreciate that Wright would not display Chicago as Negro heaven. So the original text of Black Boy ends with the family in Memphis getting ready to go to Chicago. They don't ever actually go. And so I think that's the context to it, that we talk about the Black Exodus, right? We talk about the Black migration. And there are a lot of wonderful things that happen with the Black Exodus and the Black migration. But we also have to talk about the fact that of those millions of Black people went there, many of them found out that it was just the South up north. And so I just wanted to put that context that Richard Wright, and I hate saying somebody was the first, because anytime you say somebody was the first, you obviously come back and say to somebody else. But to my knowledge, I think that Richard Wright may have been the first Southerner to put that in the context in print, which is why a lot of those liberal Northern institutions don't like Richard Wright and don't like to teach Wright, and they get a lot of Black scholars at their institutions to denigrate Wright, right? They even were able for a second to pit Baldwin and Wright against each other until Baldwin realized, like, oh, this a trap bag. Like, Baldwin, and when I say that, I'm not saying that out of malice. Hey, every Black person has been caught slipping at least once. I mean, if let me put it this way: if you ain't never been caught slipping, you're a better Black person than me. Let me put it that way. So Baldwin got caught slipping, found out he got caught slipping, and said, "Hey, I need to correct it." So, but that was the context I wanted to put that in. That Wright is so monumental, but unfortunately, because he was unflinching in his critique of Northern whites, people forget that the white man in Native Son is a slumlord. So the very bad conditions in which Big and his family live are because of the white man for whom his mother works, who's seen as a liberal savior, but he's a slumlord. All right, I'll shut up. That's it. I just wanted to add that to that.
I mean, I will call you tomorrow at some point to ask you a clarifying question about that Richard Wright Baldwin thing because of time and place.
Right.
I think Sheridan picking up what I'm putting down.
Yes, indeed. Right. A quick thing, right? And again, Memphis is entering the chat. I think that again, I was giving the whole thing pause because again, at a time where our history is being erased, when it's being changed, Memphis is one of the most important places in Black history. And the reality is a lot of people who migrated trying to get to Chicago, Memphis is as far north as they got.
Yes.
My parents are from Mississippi, and Memphis was the big city for them. And then a lot of people who went north came back down south, right? We don't talk enough. One of the cool things about the film is we don't talk enough about how many people left, right? One of my favorite scholars in the world, Native Memphian, Zandria Robinson, Dr. Zandria Robinson, has a book called This Ain't Chicago, and talks about how we situate Memphis within the context of this Mid-South era. Mid-South geographic area. So I think that, quick story, my father, he's an unofficial historian, Black sociologist, Black psychologist. And the way the movie was pitched to him as a Black man from Mississippi, he thought that the problem they were going to run into was trying to become business owners and dealing with the Klan. Mm-hmm. My father had absolutely no idea it was a horror movie and a vampire movie. And at almost 70 years old, he was very confused. He was like, what the hell? He was like, oh, the Klan and they're going to fight. And so I say that to say one of the beautiful things about sin, one of the things I love about Ryan Coogler as a director, especially from my generation, one of the things that I think he does a little bit better, I'll say better than Spike Lee, is that he's not heavy-handed. You can be a white person who doesn't like Black people and still enjoy your time seeing Sinners as a movie.
Yep.
Right. So to the extent that your Blackness or consciousness exists, you're going to pick up different things from the movie. And I like the fact that he was able to put enough in there for us to be able to have a lot of different conversations in a lot of different ways. I got a colleague here, Chinese scholar, and her research is fundamentally about Chinese grocery stores in the Delta. And I told her, hey, this is your time to shine. Yep. Because I talked to some people and they said that he put that in the movie for diversity. Like, he was trying too hard to make the movie diverse. And I was like, that's historical accuracy, which you're looking at. That's not an attempt that, why we always got to include them in our stuff. I'm like, you know nothing about the Delta. But again, you've decided you want to be a part of this conversation without just seeing, first listening or reading or just not being so quick to say something authoritatively when you don't know what you're talking about. But I love the way that Sinners allows us, for those of us who want to have conversations, to read about stuff we might not have known, and to critique or at least question the ways that we have thought about what it means to be Black, what it means to be free, what it means to be Southern, right? What masculinity and femininity look like, what beauty looks like, right? All of these things are allowed to be discussed within the context of being entertained, right? I was telling somebody it's not a documentary, right? John Henry Clark is not narrating it, so it's going to be fiction, right? It's going to be some historical accuracy, but like I text Skipp, I'm not going to go to the zoo and critique the lions being in the cages. I went to the zoo where the cage lions were, so either I'm appreciate that, or I'm not going to go to the zoo and then complain that the zoo was what the zoo said it was going to be,
So go ahead,
because I like, because somebody just put it in the chat. So for people who don't know, and I addressed this briefly in the piece, the Chinese were imported to the Delta after slavery ended to be a replacement labor class. Like, that's what people need to understand. That's how they got there. The oppressor is always thinking. You have to understand, if the oppressor's playing chess, we can't be out here playing checkers. So they say, okay, let's bring in another labor base. What the oppressor didn't understand was that when you have a connection to your home place, to your home continent, and you have resources. So the Chinese showed up, realized, oh, this is about plantation labor. No, we got some money. We're going to open some stores and some restaurants. So for anybody, that is how they ended there. They were brought there to replace us, got there, saw the lay of the land, and said, now we'll be opening restaurants and other things and grocery stores. And so my entire life, there was a Jewish grocery store, and I'm being loose with the term grocery store. It probably was close to a bodega than a grocery store, right? So you had a Jewish kind of small town grocery store on one end of my neighborhood and a Chinese one on the other end. And so, so ever since around 1865, the Chinese have been a mainstay in the Delta for and we've had a very interesting relationship, not that much different than the Jewish-Black relationship. And I say that just to say, I think for people there are a lot of people who don't understand this, so they don't know how to be nuanced in that conversation, right? The Jewish-Black relationship is look. Here's what people need to understand about Black people's relationship with other ethnic groups. And I wrote in fact, it's linked into the center's piece, the mythology of the people of color coalition. What people don't tend to understand about those relationships is, so if me and Sister Clay, Dr. Clay, we don't like each other, right? We both know we don't like each other. But Skipp is stumping a hole in both our asses. Now, we really ain't got time to work out our relationships with each other because Skipp is too busy stumping a hole in our ass. Now, the problem is Dr. Clay and I got to fight Skipp. At the same time, we working out these problems. That is, in a nutshell, a very generalized understanding of what Black people's relationship has been with other, quote, minority groups. And I think people need to start talking about those relationships in that kind of nuanced way. And as Dr. Clay said, and also do some reading, do some research before you open up your mouth and make a comment about anything about a film and about somebody's place in it. Because to your point, Dr. Clay, here's how I deal with it. Arrogant people don't bother me. Incompetent people don't bother me. But ain't no way in hell you're going to be both arrogant and incompetent. I can't have that.
That's it. You gotta choose. Yeah.
You gotta choose.
You gotta choose. I'll respect your choice, but both is crazy.
All right. So recognizing that piece, C. Lee wrote this. African peoples can only be seen as chattel to be used for profit and entertainment. Never viewed as equals, and always viewed as threats to a world of white dominance. Notice in the above examples that anytime white folks are at an impasse and must compromise on something, it is often the freedom and humanity of Black folks that is sacrificed. Boy, ain't no way your mom and dad ain't proud of you for writing that. Like that's one of those things. And I think it ties into Diallo saying that, we more Catholic than the Pope. We're more Christian than any preacher. We're more Christian than the church. We're more American than any patriot, right? And we still don't recognize the way that these things function, and their existence is dependent upon us being other.
Yep.
And that's a big message too that folks have not quite been able to wrap their head around in centers in terms of, and we've had this conversation, and it's beautifully articulated in the article about the person Annie with the strongest African consciousness and the decision she made, in terms of dealing with the loss of their child and still supporting and providing cover, right? Of being welcoming and a steward of the space, right? But those were the things that were coming to her so quickly because of her African consciousness in a way that nobody else, until she was able to make things clear to people, were even understanding. And in the end, the decision, because the question, the conversation being had about, well, why did he have to kill her and why did she have to die? Again, if we understand that life is not singular and time is not linear, if we're looking at African consciousness, then we can appreciate that scene more. But again, if our definition of everything we understand is based on white folks tell us we should want or enjoy, or how we should view family, how we should view attractiveness, how we should view success, then we fall in the side of people who are like, when I can't remember which twin was which, but when he was trying to convince the other one to be a vampire, and he was like, no vision, because in his mind he had bought into the idea that, hey, we can run this con forever, right? We just found the cheat code to be able to run this forever and not even thinking but you're gonna give up seeing the sun?
Right.
You're gonna give up seeing the sun and live in the darkness for this falsified idea of freedom?
Exactly.
But
That's
that, you know,
perfect. That's a go ahead. I just want to tell you that's a perfect way of putting it. But keep going. Yeah. Perfect.
no, that was, but I just say that because it just comes back to how we have so many conversations that we believe are black, but they're just so steeped in whiteness that we can't detach ourselves or see that what we're doing is just parroting what white people have told us to say and think about ourselves.
We are finally enough generations in where so Amir Baraka said that Hollywood was the best promotion whiteness ever had. And we are enough generations in now where black actors have been parroting white words. Lots of black musicians parroting, right? Choosing what singles to release, choosing what motifs to have. And so I used to purposely frustrate my students, and I used to say, there's no such thing as black music anymore. What exists, I said, because if you not only don't own it, but greenlight what gets released, then can you really call it black music? And so then what has happened is, and to your point, we have a lot of young black people parroting, mimicking performative blackness, right? Because what they've been inundated with is a caricature of who we are, right? That white people, what they will do is they will take the most non-threatening and the most excessive part of who we are and display that and leave the dignity and the bite and the power. And so all we now have are the trinkets of blackness and don't know what those things. So for instance, when I was doing a presentation on The Time, which was a band many people don't know started by Prince, and a lot of people don't even know that those first 2 Time albums are only Prince and Morris Day in the studio. Prince plays all the instruments except the drums. Morris plays the drums, and then Prince plays all the instruments. The African, and i.e. African American concept of cool simply only meant remaining calm in stressful situations. Mm-hmm. That's what it meant to be cool, right? Richard Pryor has a great joke about brothers so cool, we could be walking in the jungle and see a snake, and all we gonna do is jump over and go, snake, and keep moving, right? What has happened is that notion of cool, right, has been what I call made into a buffoonery type thing, where the remaining calm has become so accentuated that it has lost its social political anchor, right? Don't lose your cool under the pressure of white supremacy. Don't lose your cool in this war, because the problem is the moment you lose your cool, the moment you lose your head is the moment you become most vulnerable. And so now all we have is a stylized version of cool, but not a version of cool with essence. And so I would tell people, there's a song by Prince on his Emancipation album called Style. I don't even want you to listen to the song. Go Google the lyrics of Style. And that'll get you back into what I'm saying is they've taken our cool, which was a form of resistance, and made it a form of spectacle for their entertainment. I'll shut up.
That's facts.
So something that I will have Charity on to talk about is the conflation of respectability politics with the politics of respectability. Like that is one of my favorite things to talk to her about when y'all get it wrong on the internet. Like she definitely loses her cool.
I do.
And
I do.
and,
I stay
and
on. I can't be on the internet. I'm in a whole.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you, because that drives me batty too.
Yeah.
Right. So I just want to say thank you on that.
So yeah, like so is this piece right? But then Charity, in that I want Charity to respond to this first. Those black folks who frown on respectability politics don't understand that being twice as good as white folks refers to being physically and spiritually better than our oppressors, because often it's our natural internal sin in quotes, or vices in quotes, or normal human imperfections in quotes, that make us vulnerable to being defeated by those infected with the fallacy of white supremacy. But then, before you respond to that, he goes on and he makes a reference to Barack Obama that isn't what people will make it out to be. But he goes on, the writer Seeley goes on and says, many of you know that I spent years writing about the combination of Negro ineptitude and white supremacy as the ultimate downfall of our race. As Center shows through Delta Slim's alcoholism, Stack's ego and lust, and Cornbread's inability to remain focused on the task at hand, white supremacy alone has never enabled white people to obtain and maintain control over African peoples. It's only when African people succumb to their inner demons that those infected with white supremacy are able to oppress us.
No, that's facts. And I think being able to extract that from Centers is super important in a time where a lot of Black youth like to brag about being able to be just as mediocre as white people are, right? For a lot of them folk, and I say this because I taught at HBCU as well, and this is what kept getting people reporting me to the dean, right? Because I'm trying to equip them with the tools to combat those attacks. But the level of comfort that we kind of have grown with being in company, right, with white folks has allowed us to get caught not even get caught slipping, but we're in the state of slippage all the time, right? So these things have become normalized. And I think to your point before, and this is one of the things that kind of bothers me about Centers the conversations about Centers is how quickly and how easily we can get caught up in the spectacle to the point we don't keep space for the depth, for the analysis, because we get caught up in the conversations about, again, the performance, right? Yep. Conversations about how it looks, how it makes us feel. And emotion is not a weakness, right? But we're not being able to have those longer, larger conversations, and we end up getting fooled. Yep. Or we end up following fools, right, who are leading us because what it looks like is powerful, what it looks like is righteousness, what it looks like is intelligence, right? Because again, we've been shaped in these certain ways to think that's what it is. And for me, this is one of the reasons why, again, I like how Centers complicates, just specifically when you think of Black women and beauty standards, right? Because two things, they could have actually got a white woman to play Mary, and nobody would have flinched. Yep. Right. But it's important to acknowledge what passing looking people and the complexities, especially when you talk about that era, and that time frame, and what Blackness looked like, and how many very, very light people were not even reluctant to pass, but insistent to be Black, insistent to be included and part of the community. That's a conversation that's nuanced that we're not having. But on the flip side, in that era in Clarksdale, Mississippi, Annie is the epitome of Black beauty in that time.
Yes, indeed.
Right, and the fact that they got that right,
yes, indeed,
is something that is not lost on me, because they could have casted a whole different archetype of Black woman, and if she could act well enough, nobody would have questioned why she didn't look the way Annie actually looked. Because again, if it looks good enough, we're not going to question the decisions and reasons and stuff behind it, you know. And I think that's what bothers me, how quickly we stop at the spectacle, how easily we want to spend all our time analyzing the spectacle, not realizing that this is just a symbol that's supposed to have a deeper meaning.
I want to affirm what you just said by telling the story that's going to let you know what kind of trifling teenager I really was. So my mama walked into the room one day and said, I'm tired of your daddy giving you all these damn burn down the government books to read. You gonna read something I want you to read. That time I was a reader. Okay. She threw the book on the bed. It bounced a couple times. I picked it up. The eyes are watching God. What the hell? What is this? Okay. Read the back of it. What the hell? 3 husbands. She couldn't make up a damn mind. What is this book? And I'm flipping through the book, mad, you know, at this woman. I'm crap, more crap. And then I get to a section. And it said, Janie moved like she had melons dancing in her back pocket. You know, I might have been a little too hasty with this book. Allow me to really delve into the literature. And I would tell it to my students, and I would say, Belinda, Carla, Bertha May, Janie at that moment became every black girl I knew in Clarksdale. Every black girl, just about every black girl I knew in Clarksdale walked like she had melons. And it wasn't sexual. Now, I joke about it. I do the joke like it was sexual. But it wasn't. It was Zora Neale Hurston was giving me the women I knew. Yes, Janie may have been, you know, this very fair skin, but her structure was such that I could now relate and have empathy for Janie, because now this, so to your point about who is the love interest and who is not only the love interest in the film, but also the center of morality in the, so to be both the love interest and the center of morality, which is, by the way, what black women have always been, right? Despite our male dogmatic lust, black women have always been both the center of beauty and morality and backbone in our community. And so, yes, that is the conversation that we need to have more of, because we need, and the reverse of that, and I'm using this person just as a name, but you will get what I mean. I have a poem where I say in the poem, how come Tom Cruise is never cast as a cluxer? Because they have made in our mind what a racist white person looks like. He bubbled with 3 teeth and overalls. And I would argue that former district attorney Mike Moore, who was a Democrat in Mississippi, got away with a lot of racist ish simply because he was a good-looking white man. And had he not been a good-looking white man, I think people would have been, and because he was a Democrat, they'd have been more apt to call him out on some of the stuff. And I want to be clear, we have to be nuanced. So I don't want to paint him with a whole, right? We have to be nuanced in how we deal with former Attorney General Mike Moore. But I will forever assert that part of the reason why Mike Moore wasn't called to the carpet more was because how he looked.
For sure.
And I think we have to be conscious of the art that we intake and how the art that we intake. Shakespeare, for better for worse, was the master of, and some people would even say started, connecting physical appearance to character. So that if the character was evil, they looked a certain way. If they were heroic, they looked a certain way. And we have carried that to our detriment as black people, that we are unable to identify somebody as evil simply by how they look. I'll shut up.
These are facts.
So Sinners, Celie writes and talking about the vampire coming in and having to be invited in, invited outside. Sinners use the vampire as a metaphor for inviting outsiders in your home, community, or culture who only come to steal, co-opt, colonize, enslave, or kill. The blues as a ritual art was created by Black people for Black people and shared primarily among themselves, much like field holler shouts and spirituals, to comfort, heal, and inspire themselves. And then Seeley continues a little on. Of course, the lure to earn a profit from the outside forces made it impossible for Black people to keep the art to themselves, as white people from all over came knocking at their doors just to get a taste. The moment the blues became a thing to be commodified beyond Black culture was the moment that African Americans relinquished their juju. Now, before you get into that, I want to talk about this piece right here. Shirley posted a comment. It is exhausting for African people to be perfect to combat white hegemony. What's your response to that?
My response to Shirley is, you are right if our behavior is solely in reaction to white people. What we have forgotten, our dignity was for us. The Black people who were sweeping that dirt, I'm going to keep going back to it. The Black people who were sweeping that dirt, they weren't sweeping that dirt for white people. They were sweeping that dirt because they had an internal African notion of their beauty and their power. So yes, anytime you are doing something for somebody other than yourself, even if it's something good, if Skipp got to run Celie to the store every day because Celie ain't got no car, as much as Skipp is doing that out of the love of his heart, that's gonna get exhausting. Cause Skipp ain't doing it for Celie. And in the way that Booker T. Washington's words were taken out of context, the whole set down your buckets. Essentially, what he was saying was, we done plowed the fields and made white folks rich forever. Let's take the fields and do them for ourselves. I promise, working the field for yourself ain't gonna feel like working the field for white folks. So I want Sister Shirley to know, yes, in the context of what you're saying, you are absolutely correct, Sister Shirley. The problem is when we as Black people act in the dignified way that we've always known to be, it's not exhausted because it's not for somebody else, right? It is understanding that we are being gracious and kind and loving people because that's who you are. That's not exhausting. Now, if it helps and does something good for something else, then fine and so be it. I think that, but I like Sister Shirley's comment because we do need to raise that to let young people know. Look, and I end on this because I definitely want to hear from Sister Claire on this. I went home one day, Brother Skipp. I found out that the kids down the street, their mama was giving them $1 for all the A's they was making. I was, oh, wait, what the hell? I went home quickly to go see Claudette, and I said, Mama, they getting dollars for the A's that they making. I mean, what we gonna do about that? And Claudette looked me in my face and said, boy, if your dumb ass think you getting them A's for me. She said, so let me make something clear that you clearly have misunderstood. Whether you leave here with all A's or you leave here with all F's, at some point your ass gonna get out this house. So the A's or the F's that you make are not for me. She made it clear. This is my house. All of this is mine. So our dignity and the way we carry ourselves in public should never be for anybody else other than for our own self-satisfaction. I'll shut up.
No, that's 100%. Yeah. No, I don't even have anything to add. It's just that I think the last thing I said on Twitter before in 2017, when I got off Twitter, I said, once you take whiteness out the center of your Black life, you'll live better. You know, I was inundated with people saying, you know, saying stuff like, I bet you make white folks mad a lot. Or, ooh, you know, every day I seek to make white folks mad. Again, like you said, if you live in your life to get a reaction out of somebody else, it is going to be exhausting. But if you live each day saying, I want to be the best African I can be, right? I want to be the best friend or partner or parent or child I can be. The reality is, being a good person is also exhausting too, especially in a world that monetizes and commodifies and incentivizes buffoonery and deceit and betrayal. So it's gonna be exhausting just trying to combat not just whiteness, but I mean it is whiteness, but just being a good person. But if you're doing it for yourself, then it's just as rewarding as it is exhausting, right?
I say, yes.
We almost there, y'all. Satan ought to leave vampire asking for preacher boy in return for allowing everyone else to live symbolizes how black people have sold their souls via their music in the hope that white money would improve their lot in life. Yet the perversion of black souls via their music being relinquished to outsiders has been more detrimental than not having money.
So all cultures, I want to start this by saying all cultures, not just one culture, not just black culture. All cultures have what I call front room culture and back room culture. Front room culture is what you share with other people. Back room culture is what you share with yourself. Just like folks can come into your living room, they can't go into the bedroom, right? They can't go into that back room, right? That's for the family, right? That's where we really be family. What has happened is that our backroom culture has become so lucrative to white people because they get to live vicariously through us because they have embraced, and I want to be clear how I say this, they have embraced a form of extreme stoicism. They have perverted the concept of stoicism. See, when I want to say this, I actually had a negative opinion of stoicism because I thought white folks were living stoicism. No, they're not living stoicism. They have perverted the concept of stoicism into a thing that renders you emotionless. Yeah. So because they have embraced extreme sense of stoicism, and we were never that foolish to do that, they want to deal with our backroom culture because it allows them to be free. It allows them to live vicariously. But as we've said, everybody wants black people's blues. They just don't want the pain that comes with them blues.
Okay.
And so, but what has happened is when you give people your backroom culture without understanding how the backroom culture was created. And so I tell people, a book that I love to quote is Columbia Salam's Reclaiming of the Black Blues Self, right? And the reason, because he breaks down, he gives the 6 elements of blues culture. And he says that the number one problem is that white people have always misunderstood that black people, sensuality and sexuality was never the same thing for black people. So to be sensuous was never to be sexual. Unfortunately, in a culture of white supremacy, they have conflated sensuality and sexuality. So for them, 2 human beings can't be sensual without having sex. And if you can't be sensual without having sex, you are not truly a human being. I want to say that again. If you can't be sensual without having sex, you're not truly a human being. So what has happened is they have over-sexualized our shake it but don't break it. And here's why. And I want to say this clearly. The injection of white supremacy into Christianity. And I want to be clear. I'm not trying to convince anybody to be a particular religion. But I need people to understand that there's a difference between Christianity and Christendom. So when Christianity migrates west and gets infused or impregnated or poisoned with white supremacy, that is when you get this whole notion of the body being innately sinful. Africans never accepted that the body was innately sinful. Therefore, to move at the waist like we do is not sinful, because to move at the waist is not sexual. It is not my fault that your tight ass can't move. So because your tight ass can't move and you can only equate this to sexuality. That's not our fault, but we have allowed them to project their limited understanding of the body, their perversion of their spirituality onto our bodies, onto our sensibilities, so that our backroom culture becomes nothing but a sexualized fetish for them. And then after so long, we accept their sexualized fetish of our own culture. So now we don't even understand. So now we are perverted. We fetishize ourselves because we don't understand that we were given the fetishing of ourselves from our captors. And so that's what happens, that we gave them our backroom culture without forcing upon them to understand the roots and the history that created that backroom culture. And now Black backroom culture is the mainstream culture of the world. And essentially we have people infected with white supremacy who don't have the maturity to handle the body that's not sexualized. And now they're overly sexualizing their own children because they could never handle what we were doing with our culture. I'll shut up.
That's my mentor. That's my friend.
Yeah.
All right, and then the last piece that I'm pulling, and then we'll kind of check a couple comments, and then we'll be ready to slide. For African people, the battle for identity. Oh, and this is to you, Shirley. Like, this is how he, near the back end of the piece. For African people, the battle for identity is daily, ongoing, and never ending, and that even the decision or resolution made today will be challenged and must be made again tomorrow. He's talking about a Chinua Achebe piece. As such, Achebe is more concerned that African people understand how difficult and long-lasting the war for a positive sense of self and first-class citizenship is against those infected with white supremacy, so that African peoples don't falter or quit once they face difficult times.
So that's a short story. Well, so I love Achebe. I love Achebe's Arrow of God. I love Achebe's Things Fall Apart. But Achebe has a short story titled Marriage is a Private Affair. Mm-hmm. And essentially, and my students used to be so mad at the end of that story because it's hinging on a decision that the father has to make. And the story ends without the father making that decision. And the reason the father doesn't make that decision, because Achebe's point is, for African people, every day we have to make a decision about our identity. But the problem is, which is the same problem with our, quote, civil rights movement, we actually thought we overcame. And the moment we thought we overcame is the moment we got caught slipping, because we didn't understand that in a war, what's my man, Sun Tzu says, he says that most people think that peace is the normal and war is an interruption of peace. No, war is the normal and peace is the interruption of war. And in fact, peace is only we rest until we can make some more war. We, as Black people fighting for our liberation, did not understand that the few gains that we made was only going to be met by return fire once our oppressors took some time to rest. And so what we have to understand, that every day we are faced with having to make a decision about our Blackness, make a decision about our identity. Not knowing that is the most detrimental thing. Because if you don't know that, you will quit, you will give up. But if you know that, then you know that, okay, every day I got to make this decision again. This is what life is. And I think we need to educate our children in the same way we educate our children that every day they leave our house, there are certain decisions they're going to have to make. Whether it's decisions about drugs, decisions about gangs, decisions about sex, decisions, any peer pressure. The same way that we educate them that they have to make a decision about that every day, we need to educate them that every day you're going to have to make a decision, whether micro or macro aggression. You got to make a decision about the type of Black person you want to be. And that decision that you make on Monday will determine the type of decision you make on Tuesday. I'll shut up.
What about you,
I definitely want to hear from Dr. Clay. So.
I mean, I agree 100%. I know I was fortunate because at a very young age, through listening to Mos Def and Talib Kweli's Black Star album, I was introduced to the book Faces at the Bottom of the Well. I pulled that book. I read that book younger than I should have, but at the exact right time. But being introduced to the idea of racial realism and the permanence of racism in America when I'm in elementary school was something that, you know, the idea that I think Derek Bell says, like, even the most Herculean efforts that we make are only temporary gains. And that kind of set, you know, the way I was raised, but that kind of set the tone and let me know that there's always going to be a fight. You know, when we talk about the struggle, we acknowledge that the struggle is an ongoing thing, right? And I think in a couple of things, I think earlier when we were talking about, you know, the context of athletes, I think it's that idea that once you achieve a certain status, and unfortunately the indications of that status are, one, not being held accountable to Black people anymore, right? Not being in proximity to Black people, but actually having closer proximity to whiteness, right? Naim Akbar calls it imaginary freedom. The idea that you can be closer to them, that you can, you know, go to their doctors or access the things that they have told. The things, like you said, these infections of white supremacy are the things that we're seeking as our own validation. And then on the flip side, as a result, those are the things that prevent us from wanting to make a different choice as Black people, right? Because it seems for a lot of us, it seems more beneficial to invest in making the choice to be the Black person that white folks want us to be, right? And I say the black person white folks want us to be, acknowledging that in this era, white folks have told us what type of revolutionary to be, what type of activist or organizer to be. So now there's an archetype of Black revolutionary or Black radical that is built in the image of whiteness, right? But the bigger issue is that when being faced with this decision, a lot of us are copping out. Right. And one of the reasons a lot of us are copping out is because we're not convening. You know, I think the word community at this point is overused, right? I'm starting to go back to using tribe or just people or kinfolk, because we've stopped communing and convening with each other, right? We've stopped wanting to be in places and spaces where, like you say, that backroom culture is the true story. I met a young Black woman, late teens, early 20s, who thought the cookout was just something people said. Wow. Now, here's the crazier part is that by the way she performed her Blackness, the way she spoke, you would think that she was raised around generations of Black people. Right. She's been engaged in the internet enough to know the right line dances, the right 70s reference, the right 90s movie, the right hairstyle to sound like she fits in. But because her parents thought that raising her in a neighborhood where she was the token Black was going to be a better opportunity for her, had actually never been to an actual cookout, had actually never been to a family reunion. So she's been talking about, and she's like, in her mind, she's very Black. Right. But there's no foundation of Blackness and Black identity and Black spirituality and culture that underlies that, because that's a tough decision. And that knowledge forces you to make the tough decision, and it makes it less easy to cop out. Yeah. Right. It makes it almost impossible to get up every day and decide I'm a cave to whiteness, when you see how magnificent your Blackness or your Africanness can be. The more you know, it makes it impossible to say, you know what, I'm going to just wake up and give in.
Amen. Ashe.
Hey, so here we go. Be more Akuma, excuse me, bro. Same in Baltimore. When we were talking about Memphis, you had to go out of your way to be around and engage with white folks here. And what I think is interesting is ain't nobody being like, hey man, I don't want to go play with Lamar Jackson. So like, what's really happening there? Again, still talking about the Memphis piece. Now, there's real though growing up in Oakland, especially deep East Oakland or West Oakland, feels similar to Memphis. Go ahead.
Real quick. And I wanted to point, Chandler Parsons made a comment about how Memphis and New Orleans are the franchises that should most likely be moved to other cities, right? With the underlying idea that Black basketball fans don't deserve to have a team to cheer for. And the
Right.
Oakland connection comes because I was living in Oakland when the stadium was in Deep East Oakland, and I know the way that the people felt, whether they was working at the stadiums, hustling, going to the game, seeing people. When they took the Warriors and moved them across the bridge to San Francisco, it gutted some of the soul of Oakland.
Yep.
Right. And I think I say that to say the underlying statement about, and you know, we know sports is an opiate and we know these things, but the reality is because as Black people, we give it credence, we give it credit, we give it our time, our energy, our love. When it's taken away from us, it leaves a gaping hole. So if folks think that Memphis is dangerous now and that crime is dangerous now, once you take out something that was giving people hope and jobs, and the people and the majority of folks here who come to play do invest in the city, if you take that out, you're really gonna have some problems.
So
I say that because I saw that in East Oakland.
What I'll add is, you're not wrong. I will just say the white codification of sports is the opiate. Because
100%. Yes.
Every ancient culture had sports to teach character.
Yeah, no.
Every ancient culture had sports to teach. My father was a pro pitching prospect. He only wanted me to play sports because of characters he wanted me to learn. So the reason, so I'm with you. So we ride for it because in our communities, sports was a way in which we communed.
Yes.
Sports was a way in which we shared. Sports was another way in which we signified and played the dozens.
100%.
Right? That was all a part of who. So I'm with you on that. And that what has happened is the commodification of sports has left us feeling empty.
Yes.
Because we know, as with everything else, they take our love and make a buck off of it, and we get nothing in return. So
you're 100% correct. Yep. It's that industry. It's the industry of sports. 100%.
Speaking of the industry of sports, their bank accounts will not say these Black pro athletes who own the banks where their money is stored.
They fine with that. I think sometimes we forget that, you know, a lot of these athletes are so detached, they literally don't care, right? In their mind, they're not trying to, they don't care. They would rather go down getting whatever, you know, acumens or accoutrements that whiteness can provide them, then come back and quote unquote struggle over here with the people, right? They don't care, you know, they don't care that it won't save them. You know, they'll just go down fighting. They'll go down, you know, go down in the big house. They'll burn in the big house.
One of the we all know why it happened. So I'm not saying we don't know why it happened, but probably one of the major detriments to our community is I think that we oversold the concept of the first Black person to do something.
100%.
So the first Black coach at this, the first Black CEO at this, the first, and what that did was that sold us a false bill of goods, because it gave us that blueprint of, and again, I suffer from it, right? When I really want to make Dr. Clay, when I really want to piss people off, and we'll have to come back another time, because we had such a wonderful discussion tonight, and Skipp don't want you to know that I'm the least hip-hop person on the planet, so we'll have to come back. And when I really want to piss people off, I always say, well, you know, that's why I live my life like the back of a Prince album cover. So it ain't my fault that you ain't brave or courageous enough to live your life like the back of a Prince album cover. That ain't my fault, right? You need a producer. You need a track master, right? Right. My favorite, I didn't need no track master, no producer. So I live my life like so. Even I will back, you know, especially when I'm trying to piss people off. But the point is that, to come into your point about they don't care about who owns it, is because we have sold the first Black X as the aspirational thing to be.
Yeah, tokenism as aspiration.
Exactly. And when we sell it, because see, I'm old enough. So like I said, I'm 55. So you have to understand, being 55, That was a point, other than the one or two shows, the Jeffersons, Good Times, the vast majority of shows on television had the one black friend, right? Silver Spoons, Alfonso Rivera was the one black friend, right? I think Saved by the Bell had a one black friend, right? And so Saturday Night Live for years, one black comic. That's how we were sold, right? Be the one black person. That was the, and so in making that our dream, our aspiration, athletics, the commodification of athletics, have sold to these young brothers and sisters that it's okay to be the one black whatever, and that's not a detriment to you or your culture. So to your point, that's why they don't care, because they've been sold that you've done something when you can say that you the one black person got the big bank account. That's it.
Trav gave us $4.99. You know what I'm saying? Real good guy. Trav, if you don't hear from me by Thursday, call me up. I want you to come to Virginia with me. Oh yeah, Charity, you should come too.
All right.
Man, they hit home. Something I'm facing at the moment. I'll be leaving LA next month to move back to my neighborhood in DC to be closer to my family and build on what I built out here. Skipp, please ask these two to contribute to the channel often. You know what I'm saying? So
I see a question. It says, how do we protect our youth for sports because we're invested as black parents? I want to answer this.
Yeah, that's the last one we got. So Charity, there you go. It's already up.
Listen, I'm gonna tell a story, right? But it's my life. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. In the 90s in what people don't know is a very black community, right? Majority of folks migrated from the South, so we had Southern culture and Southern roots in our community.
Let me go shout out for you. North Minneapolis.
That's where I'm from.
Yeah,
you already get.
I spent a minute when I was writing my book on Prince. In fact, I started going to Minneapolis in 95, 96.
Oh, yeah.
My book on Prince came out in 97. And then I went back up there to work with Prince for 18 months between 2002, 2004. And just because I want you to tell your story, but what people don't know is when Minneapolis, bruh Skipp, was less than 3% black, they were able to get a black person on the city council. The black people in Minneapolis at that time were very organized and mobilized bunch. Prince comes out of a thing called the Way Center that was created after the riots when black people decided we'll tear it down. One more goddamn highway through our. So that's been my biggest. I want you to come back there, but that's been my biggest thing since Prince died is the whitening of Prince's background. That they don't want folks don't want people to know that Prince was a product.
Prince is ours.
Black parents and a black community called North Minneapolis. Go ahead, sister. Go ahead.
No, Prince is ours, and I say Prince is ours, right? So I say, man. So I grew up playing basketball. I ended up playing basketball in college. I played basketball, but I come from the north side where we did not have a home gym. So every weekend we were going to places like Apple Valley, Coon Rapids, Elk River. This is 8, 9 in the morning in the winter in the snow. A group of about 10 black girls and maybe 2 parents and a coach, going to communities of all white people that at 8 in the morning were calling us monkey and all kind of stuff. And the thing that we had was the strength of the community we came from to go out there. And when we came back, they filled us with so much that it wasn't even on the basketball court where we had that confidence and that pride and that diligence and that hustle and that hard work and that perseverance. It translated to the classroom. It translated to the way we treat each other. So my thing is, if you are black and as a parent, you want to invest in your kids' athletics, try to create spaces for black kids to convene with each other. We had some kids. The crazy thing is, when I was growing up in Minnesota, when people found out I was from Minnesota, when I left, folks would ask, "Did your dad play for the Vikings?" Because that's the way you got there. But we would have token kids in the suburbs who would want to come and play for our team because their black parents were realizing that they wasn't getting poured into them in those suburbs the way that our community was pouring into us. So for me, See, like you said about sports being the way we convene, the way we have character, the way we show love, it's refusing to let go of that tradition and selling it out for the possibility that your kid might get a scholarship somewhere. Right. Selling that out because the bonds that we had and that we grew in the neighborhood I grew up in through sports and other things, but through sports are the things that carried me to go through a lot of things. And again, when you isolate black kids, the worst experience I ever played was playing with it when I was the only black kid on a team that almost won the AAU national championship. I hated that team. I hated everything about it because I was isolated from. That was the only time I ever felt like I was gonna lose. When I played with the girls from my neighborhood, I never felt like we was gonna lose a game ever. When I was playing with the white kids, I couldn't trust them.
Right.
There's something that I love about myself that I never learned to trust white people. Right. I don't think we should allow sports to make our kids feel comfortable around white people in the ways it does. So in terms of supporting your kid, find spaces where they can convene with other black kids. You know, I know it's hard. I got a friend and he said you can't even find an open gym anymore. You got to pay to get into the gym.
Yep.
You know, and when I say basketball is a country club sport, what I'm acknowledging is that the ease of access that folks used to have to it is going away. You got to be on a circuit or you got to be plugged in. You can't just go to the park and play. But I think as black folks in our spaces, we have to make sure that black kids who don't have the money or don't even have the aspirations to go pro still have a place to use sports to convene. So bringing back that recreational sport. I interviewed an elder, and he was talking about how his parents had the means to put a basketball hoop in the backyard.
Mm-hmm.
So all the kids in the neighborhood could just have somewhere to play.
Yep.
Right. So the idea of parents getting together and investing and just making sure that black kids have a safe space to not be commodified, to not be dehumanized, to not become a vessel with no brain, but can use sports to build character. I think that's kind of I'll beat that dead horse, but because those opportunities, they saved me, because I would have been that black girl playing on an all white team, just being the workhorse or, losing my mind. Because that's what happens. And we don't do it intentionally. We think we're doing the best for our kids sometimes. Right? Finding spaces where black kids can be and not feel pressured to be the best amongst the whites, but just to enjoy the process of playing and making mistakes and enjoying themselves and having the support and love of their family who's not, like you say, living through them or hoping that they're going to be the meal ticket out, but just enjoying what sports can bring to our communities.
And I think that's a perfect answer, Doc. And the only thing I'll add to that is not only do you show up for your child in sports, make sure your child is doing something else other than sports too.
That's a fact.
My 4-year-old granddaughter just started T-ball. And she loves it because she is a little terror. That little joker, boy. She is nothing like her big brother. Her big brother was a wonderful, sweet baby. And Olivia Ray is not her big brother. But that's my own personal pain. Let's move on. But the point is that just like we take Olivia Ray to T-ball, we take her to the museum, right? We take her to the park. We take it to the bouncy place. We take, so to K Spoon's for, it is you show up for the sports, and all you want to do is make sure your child is well rounded. I think the one thing is that we've all said is the number one thing that's wrong with most, not all, but with most pro athletes, is that they're one dimensional. They're not well rounded, and so along with your child playing sports, I'm a big person. Teach them how to play an instrument.
Yes.
Music is important. So that's what I was. Everything Doc Clay says. Everything that, and just make sure they are well-rounded, and also make time for them to do nothing. I think that doing nothing has become completely underrated, and children need time to do absolutely. Some of the best times I remember was when me and my friends in Clarksdale, Mississippi, all the baseball had been played, all the cotton had been chopped, all the yards had been mowed, everything, and we just sat around and talked. We just settle. There needs to be sit around. Now, I'm not saying nothing all the time. When I say nothing, I mean resting in community, resting in community. That you have a daily, so you have a daily schedule. If your daily schedule doesn't have an hour or so to do nothing but to rest and think and meditate, then you are driving yourself to mental anxiety. So every day of your life needs to be a day of just an hour of meditation, an hour, and you got your scheduled time for reading. You got your scheduled time for studying. You got your scheduled time for sports. You need a scheduled time. And when I say meditating, damn it, I don't mean sleep, because that ain't meditating. Our children need to learn to be alone in their mind to be able to figure out what the hell they feeling. Because one of the major problems with young people is they feeling stuff and don't know what they feel. Yes, Casey. Yes, balance. That and that rest time and that meditation time provide. We keep talking about our children are stressed. We keep talking about our children are anxious. We keep talking about our children are jittery. You know why? Because they don't get to just sit down. And until we allow children just a little time to decompress, sit down, unwind, get used to being alone. Because, by the way, that's one of the key signifiers of depression. A depressed person never wants to be alone in their mind. They always got to be doing something because they don't want to sit with their depression. So we want to teach our children that it's okay to spend some time meditating with their thoughts and to be able to unpack what they think and feel. I'm good. I'll shut up for real this time.
100%.
Hey, man. Normally when we end the show, I give a prayer. So thank you for community. Thank you for people that love me and people that I can love. Give Diallo safety as he travels home. Protect James as he moves about the world. Cover Geechee. Cover Dr. Clay. Cover C. Lee. Cover those people who we don't know need to be covered, right? Continue to protect us and allow us to build community in all the ways that we know we need to build it. We're in this fight until we're not, and give us the courage and the ability to stay true to those things that we believe. Thank you. Hey, man. Right on to the real, man.
I appreciate it. This is a good way to spend Friday night, honestly.
Hey, bro. Hey, man. So look, and y'all got the chat going crazy, man. They love y'all, man. I'll be sure to tell Diallo, you know what I'm saying? This what it need to be. But yeah, make sure y'all like, subscribe, share. Charity, you're not on the internet. How can they get in touch with you?
I don't know. I'm finna be back on. I'm back on it. I don't know, man. I was on the internet, and then Vic Mensa did some wild stuff, so I'm back off the internet. But yeah, so soon I'll have a way. But your fake charity is my website. That's not even up. I don't know. I'll find a way.
I bet. Celie, how they get in touch with you? I put your the psychedelic lit link in the chat.
That's it. You know, they can either go to the Substacks newsletter or they can go to psychedelicliterature.com. That's it. I'm not on any other social media, so they can go to the website and they can go to the newsletter. And if push come to shove, hit up Skipp and he'll get you to me. So there you go.
Exactly.
All right. Hey, and if you got my number is not a secret. So if you know somebody that has a number on me, it's probably my number. So just hit my line, bro. We'll figure it out, man. Right on to the real.
Yeah, appreciate you.
All right, right on.
Good night, everybody.
Peace.